ISDD Mission Report. Case File Number 11, Captain John Harper. I'm not entirely sure where they want me to start this report, so I'll just start with us arriving at the police station. We met Detective Kessler around 10 in the morning on Monday. I can remember sitting in his office while Ramiro and White sat in the hallway outside. It felt like I'd been sitting there for a good 10 minutes before the chubby detective hobbled in while wiping donut crumbs off from his mustache. "I'm sorry I'm late. I get a little hungry when I'm stressed out," he said. I rubbed my temples. If we were sent here because people were apparently dying, then this idiot was costing us valuable time. "I hear you've got yourself a cult problem," I said calmly, trying to hide the fact that I was already a little irritated with this man. "Problem? You're damn right they're a problem." "And why are they a problem?" I asked. The man opened a drawer in his desk and tossed a vanilla-colored file in front of me. "Take a look." I opened the file. In front of me was a stack of pictures, all of practically the same thing. Every one of them looked like they'd been chewed or mangled beyond all recognition. There's barely anything left. These people had been torn apart in the most brutal way possible. My stomach churned at the sight. "Those are just the ones we found. We had to bring them back to the morgue in buckets," Kessler said bluntly. I breathed out my nose. "Tell me, Detective, how do you know these weren't just alligator attacks? I mean, you are next to the Bayou." "Well, Captain, that's exactly what I thought at first too. But the gator skin traders have been saying there ain't any gators left in the area. Something's either eaten them all or scared them away." "So you want to explain to me what exactly is going on?" I asked. Kessler sat in his chair and sighed. "It's those goddamn cultists." "The ones who worship the crocodile man?" I asked, halfway remembering the initial report we got. Kessler kind of chuckled. Then he got serious. "Don't let them hear you say that. They prefer the term Church of Sobek." "Sobek?" I asked. Kessler shrugged. "That's what they call them." "Call who?" "The thing they're sacrificing these kids to." I sighed again. "And how do you know it's the cult murdering the kids? You could just have a serial killer running around." "A serial killer? In Rainy Springs, Louisiana? This place has a population of less than 600 people. None of this crap started until the church moved into the swamplands." "Please tell me you've got more than that," I said. Kessler got quiet. "You better come with me," he said softly. The man stood from his chair and walked out the door. I followed suit. He led me to a small station singular jail cell, where a full-grown man was curled up in a ball underneath the bed. The room reeked of piss. "Ronnie, it's me. It's Detective Kessler. I've got someone here who wants to ask you a few questions," the detective said softly in an almost motherly tone. "What happened to him?" I asked. "They took his kids," the detective replied. "The cult?" I asked. "Yeah. His wife, too. Made him watch the whole damn thing." I remained skeptical. I'm not sure why, but I did. "Ronnie?" Kessler asked. The man peeked out from under his bed. His eyes were full of tears and partially bloodshot. "I need you to tell this man what you told me. Can you do that?" Kessler asked softly. The man seemed hesitant. "Is he one of them?" "No. He's here to help." "That's what they said," the man responded shakily. "Sir, I work for the ISDD. I understand you might have been involved in some sort of incident," I interjected. The man had completely come out from under the bed now. He looked sickly skinny. He sat on top of the bed. That was when I noticed just how bony his face was. He looked almost anorexic. His clothes were worn and damp. There were tears all over the red and white checkered pattern of his shirt. "Can you tell me what happened?" I asked softly. I wasn't sure whether this guy was a crazy man or not. The man drew in a deep, shaky breath. I couldn't save him. I promised her I'd save him." "From the cult?" I asked. "From their god, man. He's real, and he wants our kids. He wants to replace our children with his own." I raised my eyebrows. "And you watched this?" He hesitated. "I watched everything. They cut my daughter apart with a meat cleaver and soaked my wife in her blood. And they tied her to the stakes and then..." "And then what?" I asked. "Then he came out of the marsh and stole my wife." I gritted my teeth instead. "Kessler, I'm going to contact my higher-ups. See if we can dig up any information on this, Sobek." "How many cultists do you think there are?" I asked, looking straight at Ronnie. Ronnie took another shaky breath. "More than 50. "Shit," I muttered. "Where are they located?" I asked. They've taken up residence in an old Spanish mission down in the marshlands just south of here, said Kessler. Okay, how many police officers do you have? I asked. 4, he answered. That include you? He just nodded. We had 5, but they messed up our chief pretty good. What happened to the chief? Kessler just motioned his head towards Ronnie as he rocked back and forth in his bed. I met the team at the truck just outside. That's where I had White call base. The information we received about Sobek was minimal. Our resident cryptozoologist and mythology expert can only confirm that Sobek was an Egyptian crocodile god, one that enjoyed ritual blood sacrifices which got him booted out of the Egyptian pantheon. Apparently, this was all our archive said about him. He was just a rogue god, a minor one at that. This should have been easy. I stood there with my arms crossed as my mind wandered. What's the plan, Captain? White asked me. How does the division deal with rogue gods, Sergeant White? Firepower? He responded, sounding a little unsure of himself. I let out a soft chuckle. You're half right. It depends on the power level of the god, Miro answered. I smiled and pointed at her. There we go. So what's that mean for us? Asked White. Get your gear, load the armor-piercing rounds, and pack as many grenades as you can. We're going hunting. White nodded. Yes, sir, Romero said as she went to work. I turned and walked straight back into the police station where Kessler stood with another donut in his hand. This one was chocolate with sprinkles. I remember that because as soon as I entered the office, the phone rang and he flinched so hard he accidentally smeared it all over his white shirt. I have to admit that I was still kind of skeptical about this whole thing, up until I saw how spooked he was. Something had the man rattled. He picked up the phone. Detective Kessler. His eyes suddenly grew large. What? What's wrong? I asked. Tell him I'm on my way, Kessler said as he stood from his chair. What's that? I asked. Kessler looked at me. His eyes were wide and seemingly drained of all his energy. Goddamn cult priest just vandalized City Hall, Kessler said as he walked towards the door. Who? I asked. That's what I intend to find out, the man said in an irritated voice. We walked to the town hall building. It was a small red brick building that looked as if it was the size of a gas station. It was a few streets over from the station, where another officer had a man in handcuffs sitting with his back to the red brick. And the officer stood over him. He was a big black guy who, when I walked up, was gripping a crucifix necklace tightly. For such a big man, he seemed awfully shaken. Officer Rollins, Kessler asked as he walked up. There were several symbols spray-painted on the wall above the prisoner, ones that I couldn't really understand and honestly didn't have the time or patience to try and decipher. He ain't right, the officer mumbled. The prisoner was an older Middle Eastern man with a clean-shaven face and long, scraggly, dark gray hair. His eyes were fixated on me from the moment I walked up. What happened? Kessler asked. Officer Rollins looked at the man with tears in his eyes. He ain't right. There's no way he could know that. Can you watch him for a second? Kessler asked as he took Rollins to the side. I just nodded and turned to the smiling prisoner. I squatted down in front of him. His bright hazel eyes seemed to stare straight into me. Who are you? I demanded. The man just giggled like a child. Something funny? I asked. How's your daughter? He asked. Now, I've been working with this organization for about 4 months now. I've seen giants eat people and mutant wasps explode from the chests of children. But this shit made my blood boil. The fuck did you just say? I asked. How's Julia? Is she well? She's gonna make Sobek very proud, the man gleamed. I wanted to shove my gun into his mouth. I really did. How did he know my daughter's name? Where's Ronnie's wife? I demanded as I desperately tried to change the subject. The man pressed his lips and shrugged. I could feel myself grinding my teeth. What was this guy's problem? I know your alligator god took her. You're going to tell me where. The man's smile morphed into a look of annoyance. Sobek isn't an alligator god. He's your salvation. Through him, you all shall be reborn as gods of the marshlands. This guy was a loon. I found myself grinding my teeth again. I honestly missed dodging giants in Norway. What's your name? I asked. I have no name. Names make us different, unequal. We're all the same in Sobek's eyes. Man, your sales pitch kinda sucks, I said sternly. The man cocked his head to one side. He smiled at me. The end is coming. Humanity's fate was sealed long ago. But through Sobek, you can become something more. You can find salvation. Come on, Mr. Harper. Think of your daughter. She can bear Sobek offspring. I broke. The next thing I knew, my boot had met this man's face. The back of his head bounced on the brick wall with a thud. Listen here, you motherfucker. Speak about my daughter again and I'll spend the next 5 minutes cutting your teeth out with a K-bar. The man groaned in pain as he sat back up. What the hell did you do that for? Asked Kessler. I turned to the detective. I think I know who's been stealing the children. Kessler shot the man a death glare. Why? Why'd you cut the chief's daughter up? The man laughed. In order to be one with Sobek, a woman must give up all previous children, as only the ones with Sobek can be reborn into salvation. The blood is a shagul of commitment. If you shoot him now, I won't tell, I said. Kessler glared at me. His eyes went back to the priest. You're a sick man, he said sternly. I looked at the symbols. The thought came into my mind. Why do you do this? What's the point of scribbling all over City Hall? Captain, we got several men in robes approaching this police station. White's voice sounded off over a comm link. What? I asked. That was when I heard the gunshots crack from down the street. Oh, fuck, I shouted as I pulled the pistol from my hip. The prisoner started laughing hysterically. Kessler shot up to his feet. Stay here, I ordered as I took off towards the police station. I ran as fast as I could over there, but when I arrived, it was too late. The car had been ransacked, and not even the radio that connected all of our comm devices was still there. There's blood all over the concrete parking lot. My eyes shot to the front door of the police station. I raised my pistol and ran inside. The station was small on the inside. You could walk into the front door of the lobby, which consisted of a small sofa in front of a receptionist's desk that nobody used. Behind the receptionist's desk was a doorway to the hallway. If you went left, you'd be headed towards the detective and chief's offices. If you went right, you'd head straight towards the jail cell, which was where instinct told me to go. My heart beat away as I made my way around the corner. I froze up when I saw it. It had been too late. The cell doorway was wide open. The white floors were covered in bits of body and smeared blood. I'm not even sure how much was left of them. That was when the hand snatched my shoulder. I spun quickly, shoving my pistol into the face of my assailant, only to see White standing there, his blue t-shirt doused in red blood. They got the drop on us, Captain. They took Ramiro. Whoa, sit down, son, I said calmly as I sat him down in the corner. He gripped his pistol tightly. That was when I heard Kessler walk in with the prisoner. Mother of God, he muttered as he walked in. The prisoner laughed. Now might be a good time to call in the rest of the department, I said. Yeah, he mumbled. Rollins shoved the prisoner into the cell. The man stumbled inside and slipped on the blood. He hit the ground with a thud. That was when I pulled out my cell phone and made a second call to base, this one for backup. That call went about as good as it could be expected. I explained my situation and was told that another team would be out within the hour, only for the prisoner to cackle behind the bars. You won't get her back in time. She doesn't have any children. He doesn't require a blood sacrifice in order for her to be impregnated. What's he talking about? Groaned White weakly. Don't worry about it, I said as I examined his wounds. He'd been shot twice in his abdomen. They're going to take her straight to the church, said Kessler. Rollins leaned against the wall, still gripping his cross. Where are your other officers? I asked. They should have been here by now, Kessler commented. I wouldn't worry about them. They didn't make it out of their beds this morning, the prisoner said with a smile. I grinded my teeth again. I'd only been there for 4 hours. I thought about the fighting in Norway, about watching giants eat my teammates. I couldn't protect them all. I couldn't save them all. But I wasn't about to fail Ramiro. You got a gun safe? I asked as I turned to the detective. The detective chuckled. It won't do you much good. All we've got is a couple 12 gauges. Shit, I growled. Captain, they stole our M4s, said White as he struggled to breathe. I know, I saw the car, I said as I motioned for Kessler to come over. I'm going to need one of those 12 gauges and the location of that mission. When backup arrives, I need you to give them the same information. Got it? Kessler nodded. Okay. I turned to White. The guy was barely out of his 20s and looked like he was about to age 60 years. Keep an eye on him, I joked as I motioned towards the prisoner. You got it, boss, White said. I'm coming with you, said Rollins with a shaky voice. No, I said. I need to make sure my friend over there doesn't die from blood loss. You sure? Asked Rollins. I just nodded. I'm not even going to lie. I was questioning my own sanity at this point. As I walked into the hot sun, I wondered if I was going to get to see my daughter when it was all said and done. I was, after all, outnumbered by what I can only describe as an extremist cult that now had several M4s with armor-piercing rounds and high explosives. The odds weren't exactly stacked in my favor, but I couldn't just let my soldier die. I took one of the police cruisers through the town. That was when I noticed something that hadn't gotten my attention before. The town was completely empty. There was no one in the street. Every business was closed, and every house lacked cars in the driveway. My mind pondered what that could possibly mean. Had they all been taken? It took me maybe about 10 minutes of driving, then an additional 20 minutes of hiking before I made it to the hill overlooking the clearing and the thick canopy that contained the mission. It was a large stone structure that looked as if it had been built in the 1700s. It was your run-of-the-mill church chapel with a couple smaller buildings surrounding it. There were men in black and brown robes all scattered about, all doing their own business. I hunkered down behind a nearby tree, hoping that they wouldn't see me. I studied the area as best I could. I was hoping I'd find my friend, but I couldn't see her. My eyes scanned past the mission. I could see the riverbank through some of the trees just past the clearing. I could see the two wooden posts on the shoreline, both sticking vertically out of the ground, both with ropes attached that were about arm level. It was their altar. That was when the white van pulled up. Men began congregating, all rushing over to see what was happening. The side door slid open. Romero hit the dirt face first. Her black hair was matted in blood that I could only assume belonged to the late chief. I grinded my teeth and gripped my shotgun. I wanted to charge in and grab her, but that would have gotten us both killed. I needed a distraction. Something to get their attention. I need to steal back my high explosives before I made a move forward. As much as it pained me, I had to sit and wait for them to leave the van. I watched as they forced the screaming and crying woman to her feet. They wasted zero time dragging her towards the posts. I knew I had to act quickly. The men were all congregating around her. They paid no attention to the van. So I got up and began making my way down the hill. I stayed low, hoping that they wouldn't see me. Surprisingly, I made it to the van without incident. But the back of the van made me want to hurl. There was blood and chunks of flesh in plastic buckets. The smell was rancid. I looked around for a minute, eventually spotting what I was after. Romero's black tactical bag was in the corner. I grabbed it and opened it, breathing a sigh of relief once I noticed that the grenades were still in there. I looked around for a second or two. They still must have had her in fours. It didn't matter, though. I was all set to leave, then I heard the voice. "Is the priest back yet?" A southern voice asked from right outside the van. "Nah, he's still at the police station. He told us to make sure everything was set up for the ritual. He'll be back shortly," another voice responded. I hunkered down, hoping they wouldn't feel the need to come check out the van. The barrel of my shotgun was fixated on the open sliding door. It took everything I had to keep my heart rate steady. The two men grew quiet for a second. "Where do you think he takes the girls?" one of them asked. "I bet he takes them somewhere beautiful," the other answered. "They are going to be his wives after all." I know, I'm just curious. There ain't much beauty out here." That was when I heard the sound of a car stopping right next to the van. "Shit," I mumbled. "Ah, there he is," one of the cultists said excitedly. I heard the door open, then the sound of muffled screaming, followed by that familiar voice. "The police station has fallen," it bragged before the sound of the vehicle door slamming sounded off. "Oh look, you got the detective," one of the voices sounded. "Yes, and Officer Rollins. The other man was too weak to even stand. They shall bear witness to tonight's proceedings. Maybe they'll be able to see the glory in Sobek's grace, just like the rest of the town." "Wasn't there another guy?" a voice asked. "Ah, the ISDD captain. He'll be exactly where we need him to be. He won't be a problem." What was that supposed to mean? What did they do with White? I sat there wishing they didn't steal our radio. Or I'd have been on comms with base right now. I would have told them to hurry their asses up. "Why is that door open?" "Do you want flies getting all over Lord Sobek's sacrifice?" the priest asked as he walked over, his face suddenly appearing in the doorway ahead of me. I don't know how he didn't see me. All he would have had to do was turn his head. He paused for a second before smiling awkwardly as he placed 2 more buckets of gore inside the van. Then he just slid the door shut. It took a lot not to blow his head off as soon as he appeared in the doorway, but I knew that if I did, it would give me away. I waited in the back of the van for a few minutes. The stench of the flesh combined with the blistering heat was horrible. I wanted to puke everywhere. I peeked out the back window, which was luckily facing the congregation. They had tied Ramiro to the post by her wrist. They had also forced Kessler and Rollins on their knees. They were facing the crying woman. I took a deep breath. I dug through the bag some more. I wasn't really sure how to go about the next step. I wanted to use one of the grenades to blow the van sky high, but the grenades weren't like C4. I couldn't just place one and get hidden before detonating them. I scanned the area between me and the crowd. It was around 40 to 50 yards of grass. My eyes went to the compound. It was about 20 yards to my left. That was when an idea hit me. I pulled a grenade from the bag, my eyes not leaving the rubdoman for a second. I reached for the door handle and slowly slid the door open. I exited the vehicle, cautiously closing the door behind me. I yanked the pin from the grenade in my hand and launched it towards the chapel. I got lucky with my arm string. The frag nailed the hole that had once served as a window. I heard a clunk on the floor. I took cover behind the van. The grenade went off with an ear-shattering bang. It did exactly what I intended it to do. Every single person in the congregation of men huddled around the altar turned back towards the chapel, then back to the priest. That must be the captain. Go find him. They flocked towards the compound. I watched as the priest looked down at Kessler and smiled. He knelt to the man and whispered something in his ear. I made my move. I crept straight towards the river. There was a thin tree line on the riverbank to my right. It meant a little more distance, but I could close it easier with more cover. I reached the tree line, my eyes constantly shifting from the compound to my strung-up teammate. The priest was examining her. I crept up as quietly as I could. I struggled to keep my breathing calm. I crept up until I made it within 10 feet of them. The priest now stood at the riverbank. His hands clasped together behind his back. He admired the river. I aimed my 12 gauge at him as I made my way towards Kessler. Ramiro's eyes grew large when she saw me, as did Kessler's. His eyes darted to me, then the priest, then back to me. The first thing I did was cut the zip tie off his wrists. Free her, I whispered as I put my pistol in his hands. Mr. Harper, the priest greeted without even turning around. I aimed my weapon at him. I leveled it with his head. Well, aren't you going to ask what happened to your friend? I'm assuming he's been killed, I responded sharply. He giggled. Who do you think was in the buckets? My grip on the gun grew exponentially tighter. You're sick, barked Kessler as he cut Ramiro loose. The priest shrugged. I'm not sick. He declined his salvation. We need to go, said Ramiro. What's the rush? Sobek will be here soon, the priest said with a toothy smile that made my skin crawl. Kessler freed Rollins next. We need to leave before the other cultists come back, Ramiro said. Oh, they're staying in the chapel for this one. Sobek demanded it. I raised my eyebrow at him. I motioned for Kessler to take Ramiro, which he did. And why's that? I asked. Because it's been a while since he's gotten a worthy challenge. You heard me from in the truck. You're right where I want you. Then why am I the one holding the gun? I asked. He just laughed and turned back toward the water. Perseverance and defiance are admirable traits, Mr. Harper. They're what's kept Sobek himself alive for this long. That unwavering stubbornness, the priest sighed. He used to be a hero, you know. He was the protector of the Nile. The man squatted, his face still watching the water longingly. That's when I noticed what he was staring at. Something was just underneath the water. Bubbles suddenly flooded at the surface. The humans used to pray to him for fertility. Men would ask him to impregnate their wives, but that was before their primitive brains could fully comprehend what we were doing, he chuckled. We? I asked. The man turned back and smiled at me. Then something arose from the water, something that made my blood run cold. The thing had to be 8 to 10 feet tall. It had a brawny bodybuilder-like humanoid body covered in brownish-greenish crocodile scales with a full-on crocodilian head. It lumbered upright out of the water towards me. It made an audible thump on the ground with each step. Its black eyes were fixated directly on me. Rollins took off in a full sprint while I aimed the shotgun and squeezed the trigger. Buckshot was been in the center of its chest. It did absolutely nothing. I might as well have shot it with a BB gun. I didn't hesitate. I took off like a shot, turning and making a full sprint. The creature stopped next to the priest. I could see Ramiro and Kessler limping towards the van ahead of me. I could hear the priest cackling behind me. It didn't take me but a second to pass Rollins. That was when I heard the beast's thundering footsteps. Rollins screamed loudly as the beast caught him. I didn't see it, but I heard the crunch of flesh and bone as Rollins' scream turned to gurgles. I didn't turn until I reached the van. Romero and Kessler had already gotten in. Kessler was fumbling in the driver's seat as he looked for the keys. The beast was looking at me. Rollins' leg was hanging from one of its clawed hands, his face covered and smeared in blood and gore. I swallowed hard. "Get in the van," shouted Romero as she reached out the sliding doorway and yanked me inside before slamming the door shut behind me. "What in the hell was that?" I asked. "I told you that damn Colt was up to something," Kessler barked from the front. I could hear the thundering footsteps getting closer as Kessler pulled the keys out of the glove compartment and shoved them into the ignition. The car's engine roared to life as it switched gears at the gas. The van started to rocket forward, but there was a loud thud. The car abruptly stopped. I nearly fell into the front seat. Kessler slammed his foot on the gas as the rear of the car started to lift off the ground. I could see the beast through the back window, its eyes watching me as it picked up the car by its rear end. It didn't even seem to be struggling. I aimed my shotgun at its face and fired. It pumped and fired again. The buckshot shattered the glass and peppered him in the face. He must have done something. The beast's head flinched backwards as it flipped the vehicle onto its side. My shoulder slammed into the door of the van as the buckets of blood drenched both me and Romero. I had to wipe it from my eyes, only to see the black claws penetrate the other side of the van. I raised my shotgun and fired 2 more volleys of buckshot. Romero grabbed me as Kessler struggled to his feet. The claws cut gashes into the van above us. "We gotta go," Romero shouted as she went for the back door. The beast's other hand slammed into the top of the van. More black, muddy claws ripped through the sliding door. Romero kicked the back window open before crawling out the hole. I followed suit. Kessler was next, but the man was just simply too fat. He found himself jammed in the windowsill. I couldn't get him out. I tried the best I could. The creature had torn a hole through the side of the van. "Come on!" I growled as I yanked and tugged on the man. He looked at me, his face stained with sweat and tears. That was when the creature yanked him back into the van. He screamed so loud my ears rang. I backed off and managed to see the creature rip him through the hole it had made, holding him by his leg at its own eye level. Kessler fumbled the pistol out that I had given him. "Fuck you, you ugly bastard," he shouted as he unloaded it into the creature's face. Sobek chomped down on Kessler's head, tearing it off in one clean bite. Blood poured from the neck hole all over the van. I gritted my teeth as I pulled the bag of grenades from my bag. The crocodile god was busy eating the rest of the man. I pulled the pin off one of the grenades before tossing the whole bag back into the van. Then I took off running as fast as I could the other way. I made it all the way to where Romero had stopped before I turned around, or I did just in time to see an orange fireball consume both the van and the beast. I guess the gas tank ignited. All went quiet for a second or two. Flaming car parts lay all over the clearing ahead of us, but as the smoke cleared, we noticed something. There was no sign of Sobek. "Fuck," I groaned as I dropped to my knees. "I've never seen anyone put up a fight like that," said a voice from behind us. I spun quickly, shotgun raised. The priest stood there with a smile on his face, his robed cultists surrounding him, all with weapons trained on us. Ah, he spoke with a grin. "You're out of shells." I felt my heart flutter as I noticed that a couple cultists had our M4s aimed at us. The rest had shotguns and pistols along with a few hunting rifles. I felt myself grinding my teeth. "You can't win," I said. "The ISDD is coming any minute." The priest raised his eyebrows. "I don't care. They can't save this town. Neither could you. Sobek and his many sons will carry on even after we're gone." I took a deep breath through my nose. "Let me guess. You're one of his sons." The man smiled widely. "On the contrary, Mr. Harper." That was when 3 Osprey 3s roared overhead, unloading volleys of hot lead upon the cultists. Several were gunned down immediately. The rest scattered for cover. I dropped on my belly. I pulled several shells from my pocket and loaded them into my shotgun. "Oh, thank God," I could hear Romero groan as she dropped to her knees. "Get down," I shouted as I yanked her to the ground. She collapsed, completely exhausted. I pumped my weapon, my eyes scanning the compound to find the priest. One of the Ospreys hovered over us, while the other 2 aircraft machine guns roared. The hovering Osprey lowered a rope, and the second team came down. The first man to touch down was Captain Mike Grayson. He landed not 12 feet from me, his M4 aimed at the nearest building as 6 other Spec Ops guys in green plate carriers landed behind him. The man walked straight up to me. "You all right, Captain Harper? You look like shit." I slowly got to my feet. "I wish your brother hadn't taken a vacation. Where's the A-team? They're dealing with an escalating situation in Alaska." I rolled my eyes. "Of course they are." Ramiro struggled to get to her feet. "Get her a medic and onto the Osprey. We need to find the priest," I grunted. As soon as I turned, I saw a gunman in one of the windows of the chapel with my M4. A bullet whizzed past me and nailed one of Grayson's men square in the chest, blowing a hole clean through his plate carrier. Me and Grayson responded with a hail of bullets and buckshot. "Open fire on the chapel," Grayson ordered. I watched as the Ospreys adjusted their gunfire and unleashed hell on the building. Brick and stone didn't stand a chance. It was completely decimated. I could hear the screams of the cultists inside over the roar of machine guns. That was when something caught my eye. The priest had made his way to the shoreline. He'd made it to the altar where they'd held their sacrifices. He had another of our M4s in his hands. "Grayson!" I said sternly as I motioned towards him. Grayson motioned for two of his remaining men to follow us as the rest loaded Romero onto the now landing Osprey. We converged on the priest quickly, surrounding him with our weapons raised. He kneeled out on the riverbank. "We got you now, you sick son of a bitch," I growled as I aimed my weapons at his head. He chuckled. "As it would seem." "Drop the weapon," Grayson ordered. "Hello, Mr. Grayson. How's Trent? How's your brother?" Grayson's eyes got large as he turned and looked at me. "Don't let him get to you," I said as I inched closer behind him with my shotgun. The priest just kept his eyes on the river. He sighed. "It's okay, Sobek," he said almost soothingly. I looked past him at the water, my mind instinctively looking for those bubbles, but they weren't out there. "They won't hurt you. I won't let them." I grinded my teeth again as I leveled my weapon. "How many people did you sacrifice to that thing?" I demanded. The priest looked up at the sky and chuckled softly. "It didn't have to be like this. You humans used to worship us. Men would throw their wives down at our feet in exchange for our protection. We loved you. But then you evolved. Civilization became more civilized. Religion changed when the Abrahamic groups arrived and stole power before killing everyone who didn't follow their dogmatic faiths. The world was stolen from us. The gods of old either left, died, or evolved. So what? You don't need to be worshipped to survive," I barked. "So we evolved. You humans wouldn't understand. This planet doesn't belong to you, just like it didn't belong to us. You'll see." "I guess we will. Now drop the fucking rifle," Grayson broke in. Everything went silent. The Ospreys had stopped unloading their weapons behind us. I could smell the smoke and burning flesh from behind us. I gripped my 12-gauge tighter, fully expecting this man, or whatever he was, to spin around and open up on us. But he didn't. He just sighed, then tossed his rifle into the river. From that point on, he cooperated with us. We put him in some zip ties so we could take him in for questioning. As we loaded him to the Osprey, I finally asked him, "How the hell did you know my name? Who are you?" The priest sat down in his seat and grinned at me. "You wounded Sobek. He won't forget." I shot the man a death glare. "Perseverance and defiance," he said with a grin. I shut the Osprey door in his face. There was no way in hell I was riding with that creep.
Case File 11, After Action Report by Ophelia Wilde. Officially, the residents of Rainy Springs, Louisiana were killed because of a toxic gas leak that came from the river. Residents from nearby towns are being told to stay away. It's another bullshit story, but it works. We never actually found the remains of any of the male residents aside from those who joined the cult or what body parts remained of the city's police force. We did, however, find where Sobek had been taking the town's female population. He built some kind of nest in a nearby cave system. The place was a mess when our guys got there. There were body parts all over the place. They were fresh, too. From what our forensic analysts could tell, he killed all his hostages to cover his tracks. He ripped them to shreds. We only found one body intact, and that's putting it loosely. Her hips had been dislocated and her legs bent into a position that her feet were nearly touching the sides of what was left of her head. I'm honestly shocked the police department hadn't picked up on this sooner. How did this many people go missing? We interrogated the priest. He's been cooperative so far, but as information goes, well, let's just say he's inconclusive. We found out that he wasn't actually a priest at all. He's indeed a rogue Egyptian deity known as Set. Our resident mythology expert, who himself is a demigod, has informed us that Set developed an acute personality disorder shortly following a battle some 2,000 years ago, which is around the same time Sobek started demanding sacrifices. We're largely treating any information we get from Set as unreliable. He is scheduled to be placed on ice in the basement until further notice. As for Sobek, he is just another rogue god. We've dealt with those before, and we will deal with him when he turns up again. Rumor has it there have been Crocodile Man sightings all along the East Coast, but the thing with these is some of them occurred around the same time that Harper was having his encounter. Update. Forensic analysis of the cave has shown us that Sobek was not the only creature present at the time of the massacre. We also learned through an autopsy that was done on the one intact corpse that she'd recently given birth. DNA analysis showed that whatever she gave birth to had a mix of human and crocodile DNA. End report.
Hey everyone, this is Kaden again. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video as we delve deeper and deeper into the world of narrating short stories. This is another story that, if you can't tell, takes place in what Scary Juju refers to as the Kadenverse, but we refer to as the Out of the Darkness universe. That being said, I hope y'all guys like the story. Please remember to drop a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next story.